Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1, Deadzone, written by I Am The Hype TFS. Humans didn't find their way to space. They were found, and not all who found them would live to regret it. Humanity had nearly reached the point of true space travel, but was so far still confined to their solar system with no means of long-range travel. The probes they launched past their boundaries, however, alerted other spacefaring races of their existence. Because there was no solidified organization in place to control the ambitions of the more aggressive races, when potential competitors emerged, there was nothing to stop them from trying to either destroy or subjugate them before they could become a real threat. This time around, it was the Raxen who laid claim to the new race, positioning a fleet outside of humanity's solar system to prevent interference while they sent in a small force to scout the humans. They found a species in near constant conflict with itself, and this observation led to a fatal mistake. The Raxen formed a plan to subjugate the humans by disguising themselves as uplifters who wanted to elevate the species onto the galactic stage. They sought to undermine any slim chance of unity by sending representatives in secret to the rulers of the most powerful countries and pretending that they wanted to work solely with them. The idea was to trick them into believing they wanted their countries to rule Earth with their help because they had seen they were the most capable. But they did not consider just how deep the conflicts went between the Earth's nations and how many spies had been planted into high positions in the governments of rival countries. So their plans were immediately exposed as information passed from nation to nation regarding the deceptive offers, and the world's leaders slowly began reaching out to each other, forming previously unthinkable alliances and bonds with the sole goal of removing these invaders from their planet and making use of everything they had brought with them. It was an era of unprecedented cooperation. For a time, the nations acted as if they didn't know they were being tricked, using it as a time to understand how the aliens' technology worked, and more importantly, how to reverse engineer it. In secret, the humans began assimilating their new knowledge and adapting their own technology, advancing science by several hundred years in the course of only half a decade. They played host to the Raxen, stalled and extended deadlines by feigning ignorance and playing into their obvious sense of superiority, and placated them with admiring smiles and lavish events. The Raxen were lulled deeply into a false sense of security, and when the humans were finally ready to execute their plans, they were caught completely off guard. A meeting of the UN was called, and the Raxen were led to believe that their respective nations would be using the assembly to declare their intent to take over the planet and take them into space. The invaders couldn't have hoped for a more perfect scenario, allowing them to sit back and watch as humanity used their new technologies to destroy each other further so that they could come in and take over in the aftermath. But as soon as the assembly was called to order, the Raxen suddenly lost all contact with all personnel and ships on and around Earth. Stunned and confused, they sent more ships in, but as soon as they approached the planet, they too disappeared off their senses, and no one could be reached in any form of communication. Next, they sent in a fully armed battalion, thinking that even if the humans could block outside contact and take out their scouting ships, they wouldn't be able to compete on equal footing with combat-oriented vessels. Yet, all that followed was silence. Earth had become a dead zone that nothing could get close to without seemingly vanishing and falling forever silent. And what the Raxen truly found ominous was that each time they sent ships in, they would vanish earlier and earlier. The dead zone was expanding. A full year later, and the Raxen pulled their forces away from the solar system, having lost too many ships and people without knowing why or how to justify further effort. Perhaps, if they poured in the entirety of their fleet, they could finally overwhelm and crush humanity. But the last year had sapped their courage. The silence ate away at them. The complete absence of information from friend or foe disturbed them on a level they couldn't quite understand. The uncertainty of which these humans were using the Deadzone as a shield or a lure plagued their military leaders and divided opinion. When the Raxen finally left, the Deadzone had expanded to cover its entire solar system. But of course those who hadn't experienced it wouldn't know its ominous terror. So others came and went, They sent ships that they would never hear from again. They sent weapons that would never be fired. They sent people who would never report back. This went on for 10 years. After that period of time, the Sol System, as it was later to be known, was given a wide berth and treated like the home of a dreadful monster. Ships wouldn't so much as approach its border, as if fearing the horror living there might reach out and drag them into the inky blackness. Humanity became the boogeyman of the galaxy, even though they hadn't even taken the first steps outside their solar system. The other races feared what they didn't understand. They feared the unknown variable that lurked within that black hole of deafening silence. The utter absence of anything when senses scanned it screamed at the most primal part of their beings to run and hide from the stark abyss. It preyed on the most basic, primordial fear of any species, the fear of the dark. And it was even more severe because they knew it wasn't irrational. Something lurked in that darkness. Something made sure those who stepped inside never made it back out. Humanity. The beast that called the darkness home. So they formed bonds, established treaties and pacts, and reached out to friends and rivals alike to prepare for the day that humanity stepped out the dark and entered the galaxy. The terror of a race that hadn't even been capable of leaving their system 10 years prior, and still had yet to leave, had inspired the establishment of the Galactic Alliance. No one dared to aim a sensor directly at the Sol System, feeling like if they stared too long or too closely into the abyss, that it would begin to stare back at them. So they kept just at the edge of their range, just close enough that they would detect something, anything, leaving or entering. Right on the periphery of their vision, where all monsters lurked. And one day, something moved, just outside the corner of their eye. They detected a beacon as it drifted out of the darkness, the technology displaying characteristics of several different species, but in a wholly unique construction and melded together seamlessly. It was as if the best parts of the similar technologies had been extracted, combined, and further improved. But more important than the implications of the beacon itself was the message it beamed out to the galaxy. It was a video featuring a single human male in a military uniform, the epitome of what the humans referred to as a grizzled war veteran. One of his arms had been replaced by a bulky prosthetic that looked designed for combat, and one of his eyes had an unnatural glint to it. His gaze was cold and steady as he glared into the camera. "We are here and we are ready. If you want peace and have the courage to come meet us, our ambassadors will hear you out. But this message is for anyone out there who gets the idea of trying to kill or oppress us again. Know that whatever part or portion of your forces that reaches into our territory is lost to you the moment it enters. In other words, if you decide you want war with humanity, the only question you have to ask yourself is, what part of you are you willing to give us?" End of story. Story number 2. Prey, Not Always Harmless, written by Fred Lowe. Beginning playback. Title screen. Prey, Not Always Harmless. Title screen fades, showing a human in blue overalls and a plaid shirt, sitting in a wooden rocking chair with a rabbit in his lap and a goat at his side. Cute, aren't they? Some prey animals can be so sweet, but not all of them. Hello, I'm William Smith. You may know me from such informational films such as Deathworlders, Not As Bad As You Think, and Never Allow an Engineer to Remain Bored for Too Long. In this ever-evolving galaxy, there has been a standout evolutionary constant. A significant majority of the known species evolved from various prey animals. Not counting predators, plant and hive species, prey species count for 90% of those known. However, just because some have evolved from prey doesn't mean that they are powerless against others. Oftentimes, they only have to look for the reasons they manage to maintain their superiority. They may have developed certain physical attributes or learn how to make tools early in their development that allow for their continual survival and evolution. And still, some managed a form of somewhat symbiotic relationship with their would-be predators and came out the better for it. But there have been a couple that were lifted to sentience. The lepers, for example, are not only extremely cunning, but their strong legs and excellent hearing allow them to avoid direct conflict. resorting to a more guerrilla-style combat that made use of their speed and agility. The Loxodon learn how to herd themselves and use their massive trunks as bludgeons against threats. The Gallus would make themselves appear much larger than they were in an attempt to scare the predators themselves. Others managed to figure out ways to avoid their predators. The Servant developed a form of camouflage and created natural traps to deal with their main predators. The Kamai developed a skin that allowed them to blend in with their surroundings, and their natural stillness would cause their predators to not take notice of them. These traits can often be seen in the species today in the way that they fight. The Leper's warrior caste hit hard and fast in combat, then retreat before the next strike. The Loxodon often swarm in mass, similar to some hive species. The Gallus will make themselves appear stronger than they really are with fake weaponry on their persons and ships. The Servant can lie in wait for their perfect moment to strike, and the Kamai are known for their stealthy tactics in combat. So while the Spray species might seem to be simple to defeat, one must only look at how they developed to know that not all prey are harmless. Keep that in mind as you travel the vast galaxy. Please join me next time for Galactic Buffet Etiquette, How Not to Worry. Scene fades to white as a logo of Serpentine humanoid technician, tool in hand, near a device with the words, "Brought to you in part by Squamate Shielding, will keep you safe," before fading to black. End playback. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.